Good evening, everyone. So nice of you to come. At last minute, I thought of changing the topic to Nepal. That would have been more relevant. Fortunately, we need to focus on this one as well. Uh, the other reason is, of course, no one knows what's going on. This one relates to our relationship with our most friendly neighbor, at least till recently. And our concern is that uh, 1 out of every 4 humans on this planet lives in this little area. We are 2 billion out of 8 in these 4 or 5 countries. So everyone affects everyone else in some way. The sudden development that took place wasn't really sudden for many of us who've been keeping watch. Now, on the panel, first on my left is Rishi. He has been studying eastern Bangladesh on a daily basis. So he knows what's happening in today's elections as well, local sector. And Sri Radha has been with the IDSA and then chair of the Maulana Abul it's a huge name. Makais, as we call it. And Harsh Singla, of course, requires no introduction. Harsh has been, in my estimation, because I also have friends and watch in Bangladesh, the most popular High Commissioner in recent times. His Facebook is bursting with people from Dhaka and other places, and then Foreign Secretary, and now MP. So he knows the place in and out. What I'll do is I'll just give you a sum up for those who haven't been up to date. The first warning sign we get is I'm using terms free to myself, no more in government, either this way or that way, is the January elections. This was the 4th time in a row. January 24, we had elections Bangladesh had elections. And all the major political parties, excepting the Jatiyo Party, boycotted, saying that the previous ones had been rigged, etc. The voting percentage universally accepted is just 27. And Sheikh Hasina, the Awami League, got 222 seats directly out of 230, and 63 independents, most of whom were said to be friendly with her. So it was a one-way house, and that is the first major warning we had, that there's a question of legitimacy involved. Now, it's a neighbor, and there's a point up to which we don't comment. But in this case, as I'll say in an open assembly, we were dragged in because the narrative, which is very strong in Bangladesh, and we have not been able to refute it, is that we are involved in some way or the other. Now, what is the major interest is that Hasina and the Awami League have been secular. But other than that, as I've written elsewhere, there were strong charges of repression, human rights, etc., corruption on a massive scale. Now, but then it was during Sheikh Hasina's regime that the GDP shot up by a huge margin, from something like 2 billion to 54 billion. So that's the credit part of it. The last stages, if I may use such a term, were very, very controversial. The people who are in touch, I have to be in touch because even now a part of my family is still there. So it's an option. They talked of the Hall of Mirrors and stuff like that, torture chambers, etc. And part of this narrative hit back when the students' movement took over, and Sheikh Hasina had to fly away. In the next 1 month, it was largely anarchy. Anarchy. And one of the reasons I'm using again a strong term, anarchy, because the police stations that are at the front line of law and order had all collapsed. Policemen were dragged out, beaten out, etc., by people's anger. 400 police stations were damaged, just to give the official figure. Now, that was a period when India sort of also erupted in the emotional reaction to whatever was happening, because people, the Awami League supporters, beneficiaries were singled out, and among them a lot of Hindus counted. So that part hit us more. That now whether they were being accosted for being Hindu or for being Awami League is a question that one has to be a little more nuanced. The other thing that, this is the current picture, the other thing was a question of when the legacy of Mujibur Rahman was being shattered. That shocked people here as much as the events. Now, I would interject to say one thing, that people who are abreast of the developments in Bangladesh know that his last part of his tenure was very, very controversial. Very, very controversial. And on the factual side, we have the 1974 famine. 1 million died. How many among you know? That over 1 million people died in Rangpur, in North Bengal. People don't know. We know only him as the restorer. So we have a narrative problem also on this side, and a claim for gratitude. But see, these things don't happen. One of the countries I can refer to was the people of my age or thereabouts would swear by Vietnam, that period. And China standing next to Vietnam, solidly. Over the last 15 years, come on. यहाँ दे दो ऊपर आप बात करो. So for the last 15 years, the bitterest rivalry in that region is between China and Vietnam. The international relations doesn't work out like that. As generations cross, as memories fade, lots of things. So this entitlement thing is also another thing we have to get over. I have also mentioned the immediate reaction, of course, everywhere else was that the US has scored it. One doesn't know it for sure until some material gain, something here. So, until some material gain takes place. Now, where do we stand? We are not on the same terms as we were with the Hasina government, but we cannot choose what our neighbor does. A sovereign neighbor has their compulsions, but there have been provocations, strong provocations. Now, how does one react to a provocation? I would submit, since the time limit of this government has been pre-set, it is only a stopgap government, and that the army chief has reminded stopgap government, it's a stopgap government. So taking long-term views or issuing long-term, even if I use the word threats, is not within its remit. The permanent government, or whatever, the legitimate government, will be elected, hopefully in February. Hopefully in February we have the voice of the people coming out. So far what we are getting is what is portrayed as the voice. I can say with some certain amount of certainty that the popularity with which the present set of advisors was brought in August doesn't exist now. there have been breakaways, resignations, disillusionments, etc. But that again is none of our business. The prime actors we now find, because there is a saying that there is a complete takeover by extreme right forces or extreme Islamist forces. That's not true fully, because I have two experts on two sides and somebody who knows even more. There has always been a group there like that, and for well reasons. As a Bengali, I know the relationship between the Hindu overlords and the Muslim others there has not been the best. But there have been strong sentimental bonds also. We have to take a view on either side. Now we are, as we move towards the election, we see the groupings are A, the Awami League, the center left is banned. Banning of a party does not mean that they won't be able to stand for elections, but doesn't mean the voters are going to sleep on election day. So there's that factor that has to be considered. The Army League's better known, the BNP, the Bangladesh National Party, appears to be the best organized so far. Well spread out from the time, because right from immediately after the assassination of Sheikh Mujib, it was organized, and Ziaur Rahman, of course, has this thing to say that he was on the ground fighting the Pakistani forces when others were not there. So he had his claim. When our relationship, our means India's relationship with the BNP has been wobbly. Wobbly for various reasons. One was you didn't give me the place I deserved. We accused that you are harboring northeastern insurrectionists. It's another fact altogether that many of the northeastern fellows are today rehabilitated and they are running. But so these factors come in. The BNP is right now. Madam Zia is in no position to run. Son Tariq is not coming as of today. He's supposed to come any day and take over the reins. And until then, Fakhrul Alam is carrying on with a certain amount of command. But there are internecine quarrels. I won't use the word quarrels, let me be a little more. There's internecine violence taking place. Violence, absolutely. There are charges of extortion. It's all in the public domain. I'm not making it up. All taken to the public domain. And then the next party is General Ershad's party, Jatiyo Party. That again is a twin model with internecine wars and everything. So the two major two established players are the BNP and the Jatiyo. The third factor is Dr. Yunus's admirers among the student community have set up another party called the NCP. At a distance, it looks rather rootless. Some of the student leaders who went there, it doesn't seem to have penetrated into the villages, but it's there. And it's the blessings of Muhammad Yunus. In fact, one of the charges made bluntly against him was that you are postponing elections. You're postponing elections in the name of this and this because they want to strengthen the NCP. So the NCP will be a factor, and let's see how they fare. But the worry of India and most others was what we call the Islamic right. The Jamaatul Islam has been always put as the chief adversary, but very few people know that the Jamaatul Islam has never scored anything in elections. Never. It's a force. It's backed either the BNP or the General Ershad's Jatiyo Party when it came to. But when it comes to electoral politics, it is not so. I think the maximum is about 11 or 12 seats, that's all. But then they seem to think that their day has come. But on the other side, there are other parties as well, and five of them, five of the Islamic parties, led by the Bangladesh Khilafat Majlis, have formed another union. So there you have the Jamaatul Islam, there you have the five Qawmi Madrasa parties. So it's split. And then further extreme right, we have Rita, Dr. Ghosh. Okay. Further extreme, we have Hizbatul Tahrir, you have the Bangladesh Jamaatul Mujahideen. There are more and more and more. So we have this spectrum that starts from what we call the center right, BNP, and goes all the way up to right. To politics is an art that doesn't work that way. So what happens is the space vacated by the Awabi League, what we call the center left, there is a possibility that the BNP will be pushed by the extreme right to move and take up a bit of that space. But this is all speculation. My part of the story ends here, and I'll start by requesting Harsh Shingla, a very dear colleague, and he's also made the same mistake of going to Rajya Sabha. But I hope he does better because he has more tact. Tact was one of the vices I never cultivated. So, over to you, Harsh.
Thank you, sir. And let me begin by thanking the IIC for hosting this discussion on a very timely and relevant subject. And I'm also very honored to share this platform with very senior colleagues and also Rishi Gupta, who's here. So, I think Mr. Jawahar Sarkar has given us a very comprehensive account of the situation. And honestly speaking, I don't think there is much to add in this regard. What I'll try and do is to put some things in perspective. And then, of course, leave it to the interaction that we will have, I think, subsequently. First, of course, is that, and what has sort of briefly been alluded to, is that I think we have to see what is happening in our immediate neighborhood in the context of what's happening globally. I mean, clearly, we are in a world of great flux and uncertainty. Certain things that would have been shocking a few years ago is today taken for granted. I mean, the sort of, I would say, loss of civilian life in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, for example. There is a old age home that has been destroyed, 20 odd people have been killed, but it's par for the course because this is a daily occurrence. In the Middle East, you're seeing violence of very unique, unprecedented nature, including crossing red lines. I mean, I think if you look at the attack in Doha, which was designed to eliminate the Hamas leadership, it's a new normal that has been created. Yet we take it in stride. That uncertainty and the strategic rivalry that we see on a global basis is really, in some senses, coming down to our neighborhood. This was not the case earlier. I think there was a time in which India had a certain level of preponderance because others were not indicated. Subsequently, we saw China becoming quite active in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in other countries, Sri Lanka. And I think today it is more than just that. There are a number of countries that are involved one way or the other. Some of them are positive actors and some of them not so positive, but all of them have, I think, some role in some of the developments that we are seeing. So Nepal, I think, in a certain sense, is really a similar sort of occurrence to what has happened in Bangladesh. Of course, there are differences, but in a certain sense, it's a similar spontaneous, what looks to be spontaneous. I don't know how spontaneous it was, but it has obviously resulted in the overthrow of, at least from the point of view of the country concerned, a constitutionally elected democratic government. And there is a fair amount of violence that has gone with it. And there are uncertainties as to what will happen next. And I think we are seeing the same scenario, of course, in Bangladesh, because there is still a fair amount of uncertainty on how things will proceed. The interim administration, has been, I think, in place now for almost a year. I mean, more than a year. And you have various reform measures that are being undertaken. And there are questions as to whether some of these reforms are constitutionally provided for, because there is a state of uncertainty constitutionally, because you don't have constitutionally a provision for any interim administration. The constitution has ruled out a caretaker government, and this in a sense is a caretaker government. But what are its powers and what can it do? There is some amount of uncertainty. The same thing in Nepal. I mean, you've got a caretaker situation which is emerging, but how constitutional is that? What is it? Does it represent? And is it, temporary? Is it there just to secure elections for an elected government? The parliament is still in place. The parliament is still in place in Bangladesh as well. You have a president, you have parliament, you have the chief of army staff. So that uncertainty is there. The one thing that's important to note is what has gone into our relationship, in terms of, our, let's say, engagement with Bangladesh in recent years. And I think that's important in trying to understand where we are. I mean, in the last 15 years, we have invested a fair amount in developing connectivity and in working with Bangladesh for the country's development. And I think that has been obviously to our benefit and Bangladesh's benefit, because we have both agreed that whatever we do has to be for mutual benefit. So the investment in developing integrated checkposts along the border, streamlining movement of goods and people, ensuring that ports, airports, roads, flyovers, bridges are constructed, strengthened. Not only restoring pre-1965 railway line, but adding new railway lines. In a certain sense, you can take a fully laden, goods train from Delhi right up to Agartala through Bangladesh, because today you have the infrastructure to do that. You have gas pipelines, you have high-speed diesel pipelines, you are providing Bangladesh with power both from the eastern and western side. And so the investment in Bangladesh is really, from our perspective, in our interest, because Bangladesh is really that space between us and the eastern arm of our country, which is the northeast, except for a small Siliguri corridor, the chicken's neck as it's called. I think we have to really rely on Bangladesh's goodwill in ensuring that we have adequate connectivity with this important part of our own country. And that's, I think, something that we have worked on. Inland waterways, a whole range of areas where I think both countries worked. The other area, I think, which was very important, was developing people-to-people contacts. Mr. Jawahar Sarkar has been an integral part of that, because we worked together. He was leading this effort and developing the cultural links. 150th anniversary of Rabindranath Tagore, 100th anniversary of Nazrul Islam, the linguistic links, the cultural bonds that were very, very strong. And I think that was important. Also ensuring that we had a regime that was liberal in terms of visas. Ensuring that travel into India was something that was normalized and also facilitated in a manner that did not, I would say, put a lot of burden on the applicant from Bangladesh. So I do recall that when I was High Commissioner, the number of visas we issued increased from 5 lakhs a year to 15 lakhs a year. And this is just in the span of 1 year. Because we facilitated and streamlined systems that made it easy There was a system where, people had to call the High Commission to get a visa, but we ensured that nobody had to call anybody. It was transparent, it was easy, and it was possible. And it benefited us also because a lot of Bangladeshis came to India, spent money. In a conservative estimate, it was spent that $4.5 billion is being spent in a year in this regard. And I think more importantly, it ensured that there was greater people-to-people contact, and that is important. But what is the motive behind all of these investments in terms of infrastructure, in terms of people-to-people connects? I think the motive, as we all worked on right from 2009 onwards, was essentially to ensure that irrespective of which government came to power in either of our countries, that relationship endured. There was a sense that it was so important from our perspective. Bangladesh was such an important country, and for Bangladesh, India was an important country, that we needed to both work to, bring in systems that were not only viable, but also endured irrespective of changes in government. And to some extent that has happened, because irrespective of the very dramatic changes that have happened in Bangladesh, in some senses having consequences on India and Indian sentiment, Mr. Sarkar has spoken about that. The basic relationship in terms of the exchanges, movement of goods, supply of commodities has continued. That has not been disrupted. And so I think from a certain larger standpoint, I think the effort to synergize our two countries in every possible manner has been successful. Of course, today, there is a sense of a strong sentiment against India. There is a sense of some resentment for having supported the previous government. There is also a sense that we are not really forthcoming with regard to relationships. I think there are responses to all of these. As far as we are concerned, we have, as I said, tried to ensure that the relationship is maintained with as much normality as possible under the circumstances. We have also tried to make it clear that the election of governments is the choice of the people of Bangladesh. I mean, we are not involved in that process. Whom you elect and whom you keep in power is up to you. Whether elections are rigged or elections are fair is not something that we are in control of and we are responsible for. And if there is a change in system and there is a sense that this has changed, I mean, it has nothing to do with us. We do, of course, believe that elections should be free, fair, and inclusive. I think that is important to note. Inclusive is important because if you keep out more than 50% the polity of Bangladesh, which is basically the Awami League, the Jatiyo Party, and the entire Mahajot, the entire gamut of parties which is seen as, in some senses, secular, progressive parties, whether it is the Workers' Party or whether it is the Jashod or any other dispensation which is part of the Mahajot, you are keeping away a significant part of the, let's say, political system from what you were actually mandated to do. I mean, you claim that you have been mandated to provide for free and fair elections. You are protesting against an order that prevented free and fair elections, and what you're really doing is not allowing that free and fair election to take place, because without inclusivity, the election is not free and fair. I can say that I will only have two parties participate, and one party has got, as Mr. Jawahar Sarkar said, 90% of the vote. But is that an inclusive election? So that issue remains there. I think that is important for us to consider, that an election, however early or late it is, and we've always I think, urged early elections, as others in Bangladesh have done. The BNP has asked for it. The army, as Mr. Sarkar has mentioned, has also asked for it to be held by December. But whenever this is held, not allowing a significant part of the political system to participate in the electoral process in a certain sense really goes against the spirit of the movement that brought about the change in August last year, and is going to be an outstanding issue even beyond that electoral process. So some things are there and some things have to be kept in mind. I think as far as India is concerned, I think this is my sense, it's purely personal, I have nothing to do, I'm not talking from a government's perspective, that the importance of Bangladesh will continue to remain. And we have to work with all our neighbors in a constructive, cooperative manner so that we have results that are the best for the people of both our countries. It does not help to have, to encourage a system or a sort of a sentiment that goes against, I would say, at a public level goes in a way that is anti someone else. So an anti-Indian sentiment or anti-Bangladesh sentiment doesn't help. On the contrary, I think it drives yourself into a corner. It also seems to reinforce the view that political Islam or conservative Islam is the dominant partner in the current system, and that when you have an election that is not inclusive, then you are trying your very best to bring back in whichever way possible the same, let's say, coalition that today is part of the interim administration. I'm just leaving these questions there. I'm not passing value judgment, but we need to keep all this in mind. So I just stop here, sir, and we'll see how to
come back on this. In fact, one of the major accusations made against the present interim government is that for all the repression that the Awami League, Sheikh Hasina was accused of, in many cases they seem to have bettered. Detention without trial, etc., etc. So there has been a little bit of, quite a lot of disenchantment, and as Harsh has indicated, 3 incidents, one after the other, have proved that even if democracy does not capture the spirit of the people, in other words, the elections don't represent the reality of what people want, there are other options, other very, very unpleasant options. It's proved. Nepal is the last case. So with this, I move on to Dr. Rishi Gupta, who's been a keen observer, keen and sympathetic observer of developments in Bangladesh.
Am I audible? Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind introduction. And also, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Amber Shingla.
Even from the first row you cannot hear.
Okay, am I audible now? Am I clear? Okay, I think there was a technical issue. So, Amber Shingla, as well as I have a huge challenge because I have my former boss as a co-panelist, Dr. Shirata Datta, plus my present boss, Mr. Akshay Mathur, and also our institute is located in the same premises. So it will be a huge challenge for me, and also I'm the youngest. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I would also like to thank IIC for inviting me. I think I've prepared my notes in a way that presents the existing situation, and already a lot has been said about what has happened in the past 1 year. But as we speak today, I think there are 2 key events happening in Bangladesh. The first one is the National Consensus Commission, which is basically working on the reforms, had its final meeting today, the 3rd meeting, and that will somehow, I would say, reflect the mood or the national mood whether the elections will take place very soon, or whether these 30 parties who are part of this consensus commission would agree to election that is coming sooner or it will be later. I think the second key event that is happening is there are local university elections also happening. So two key universities, Dhaka University, which was obviously leading where the students from which university were actually leading the protest, plus Jahangir Nagar University. So I think these two universities have held their elections, and one of the key outcomes, very surprising one, that the Jatiyawadi Chhatra Dal, which is the student wing of BNP, has actually swept elections in Jahangir University, Dhaka University, and Jahangir University is still counting its votes. So these are key two developments. I mean, if we can speculate, we don't know what will happen. Sorry, I made a mistake.
What he meant
Yeah.
is that the party that has taken the strongest oppositional stand to the present regime, their student wing have won the Dhaka University elections.
So I think I'm making an error actually. So it's the student body of the Jamaat Islami that has actually swept the
That's
elections.
Jamaat
So
Islami.
that's what I was trying to say. So these are two key developments that have taken place today itself, and I think it will also determine where the country will go from here, in terms of political mood, in terms of in what people are voting. I think that will determine in many senses. But I'll make 4 key points. One would be on on how should India react to what is coming in Bangladesh. One would be political outreach. I think that will be a key to how we perform or how we engage with Bangladesh. I think there is a rising presence of new Gen Zs, student-led parties. NCP is one key party that has actually made a huge mark in recent years. In past 1 year, it has registered itself as the party as well. So I think Nahid Islam, who is the leader of the party, he initially was part of the advisors group, but later parted his ways and started a party. Second, I think there is an entire divide between the student unions itself. Not everybody within the NCP is getting along. So that's another divide that we should be watching. Third, I would say, we somehow we will have to engage with these student organizations because that will be key to how we actually engage with Bangladesh in the future. I mean, one of the blames that India has had in the past that we always relied on Awami League, as Mr. Sarkar also said, that we did not get along with BNP because we were at certain odds. But I think this may be the right time for us to also start engaging with the student-led, emerging leaders or student leaders who have been actually a part of this entire revolution, if I may use that word. The second point would be on voicing for democratic stability. I think Abhilash Shingla also pointed that we would certainly not want to make it look like we would not really intervene in any manner because it's a sovereign nation, sovereign elections. But I think what we must voice, as we always said, India is a mother of democracy. So why don't we say, advocate free and fair elections? Second, I think that India has been doing quite well. That is the quiet diplomacy. That is avoiding to comment on serious issues. I had a huge challenge of changing my mood actually, because past 2-3 days been speaking on Nepal, and then had to get into a Bangladesh mode. So, but somewhere I think the parallels are there in terms of, if you look at what's happening in Nepal, the younger generation, if anything that comes from India, even in terms of support, one tweet that Prime Minister Modi made had a huge backlash in Nepal. The Gen Zs reacted to it. There was an entire divide. I think similarly there are sensitivities when it comes to engaging with the Bangladeshi youth. They certainly have the current generation does not carry the baggage of history. For sure, the students who participated in the entire movement, they do not carry the baggage of history. And I would say that would be very key factor while we engage with Bangladesh in that sense. Third factor I would like to point is understanding China is increasing. I think my co-panelists have already spoken about how China over the years has started a kind of, China is very deep-rooted. Today, India's trade, bilateral trade between India and Bangladesh, if I'm not mistaken, is around $15 billion. Whereas if you look at China's trade with Bangladesh, it's around 25 billion. So there is an entire, despite being neighbors, our trade is not at that mark. So I would say that tells you, that's a telling story of where we are in terms of engaging with Bangladesh. Second, China was the first country when everything happened the entire movement happened in Bangladesh. China was the first country, the Chinese ambassador was the first person to start engaging with the political parties which were actually banned. They reached out to BNP, they reached out to Jamaat-e-Islami, they even made statements in public saying, talking about, acknowledging the role of Jamaat-e-Islami in nation building. Quite a contrast, but they did that. So, unlike China, that it does not speak on internal matters, I think this was somehow, or I would say they were trying to benefit from the opportunity, because there was certainly an understanding that India was not really going to get along with the existing spectrum, political spectrum there. Third, I would say the recent developments in terms of China becoming an arbitrator. China held recently in June, China actually held a trilateral meeting, the first kind of its kind, that brought Pakistan, Bangladesh, and China. So China led that summit. Pakistan was quick in saying, it was at the ministerial level, China was quick in saying that, Pakistan was quick in saying that it's an inaugural trilateral summit, whereas Bangladesh avoided commenting it in that manner, saying that it's an informal meeting. But I think there is certain sense of Chinese presence within the region, not just in countries, but within the region, where they are making attempts to fill the gaps where India has actually, in past few years, seemed missing. I mean, SAARC is obviously a telling story of how regional cooperation has failed in several senses. The fourth point that I would like to make is a careful assessment of the political mood. The Ganga Water Treaty is coming to expiry in 2026. I'm really sure that political parties would want to use this, if we are not careful in communicating whether we want to revise it, we want to redo it, we want to revise it, we redraft it. I don't know what will be the outcome, how the negotiations are going, but there will be parties who would want to take benefit of these events, and any response from India would also be a matter of inciting a kind of nationalism that benefits them. So thank you so much. I'm concluding.
Well said. And also, sorry, I've been mentioning that we need to go, and not now, for many years, that we need to go beyond the Army League. That the other parties are would also have to be brought within our discussion ambit. And now there are no choices, number one. Rishi has mentioned about the students also constituting a factor, and as we see from recent developments, we can't ignore them. One of the things that was just circulating in my mind, and I'll ask Harsh and others who are more mainstream, is that we did have some knee-jerk reactions, and on both sides. The medical visas could be ramped them up again. Medical tourism from Bangladesh helps both countries in a rather big way, and every now and then I keep getting, almost every week I get a thing to speak to someone to come over for treatment. that would set the trend. Just like, Delhi wouldn't be impressed, but Bengal and many others are very impressed by the fact that Hilsa has crossed the border. So, these things matter on a people-to-people basis. Hilsa has crossed the border. With this, I'll request Sriradha, and Sriradha has not only been deeply engrossed in studying, she's a regular visitor, and she's come back only last week from Dhaka. So she knows the field better than all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chopra. Pleasure to be on this panel. A few thoughts about my last visit. I do study this region a little more closely, especially Bangladesh. But the last 1 month or so, I was very confused about what was happening: election, no election, certain parties demanding, the commission's meeting. My first few days in Dhaka confused me further because I was getting a lot of different signals from different political parties. So far as BNP is concerned, I did have some conversation with some of the members. They were absolutely sure the elections are going to be held. And I think that's a public position. We've heard about that. They also talked about, as of now, except for the regular core coalition, they're not going to look at any other coalition. I asked about NCP. How do they feel about NCP relocating at this point of time? Because NCP alone, of course, is not an electoral position at this point. Somebody at the higher level did mention that they haven't ruled out having a coalition with the NCP. He says conversations haven't started yet, but there's some thought going on. But again, we don't really know. But as of now, this is how it is. I also met Dr. Tahir, who's the number 2 in the Jamaat Islami political party. I keep meeting him every time I go, and he keeps saying this, that you're the only Indian who comes to visit me. Apparently, nobody else wants to be seen with him. He, of course, mentioned the fact that there is certainly elections going to be held. There was a tentative date about 12th Feb. It's still not been announced publicly, but he says elections will be held. The discussion which is ongoing now is about the PR, whether proportional representation can be applied for this particular election, or can that be discussed later when the parliament is held after constituted after election. So that was the point, and I think when I talked about the fact that you are insisting on PR and so is NCP, because of the fact that in the regular first past the post you're unlikely to get your numbers. Isn't that correct? He said, yes, that is correct, but again, it's not equally representative of the ground reality. NCP, of course, as we know, is very urban voice at this point of time. In fact, the student election we've seen didn't cut any numbers for them, so clearly they're but they were holding some very successful rallies. I in fact was there last November when they had a rally somewhere in Shahbag and close by. There were not even 50 people attending those rallies. But the recent rallies that they've held over several districts have had a huge turnout. Now again, my experience of West Bengal when the entire state came out to see Rajiv Gandhi, but they didn't get a single vote, is always very instrumental in my head. But so I'm not really sure whether NCP, even though they were really getting thousands, not hundreds, in the last few rallies, how they're going to do. And again, as I said, the student election. But this is the first time that I'm seeing these jeans worn, T-shirt, half shirts, Jamaat, Shibir activists, Shibir numbers. They were on the television channels all day long. Extremely articulate, extremely charming, saying everything that you want to hear. They talked about corruption, which is true. So, the fact that, there are two theories about the student election. Not that student election, which is, of course, this time extremely important here, is necessarily reflective of the Jatiya Samsad election, but I'll still, delve a little bit on this. There are two theories. I was listening to Taj Hashmi, who's a historian I hold in great esteem. He was explaining in a podcast yesterday that during the Awami regime for the last several years, he says most of the students, and he mentioned the number of 40,000 students, 32,000 students in the university system as Awami League loyal supporters. He said these are the numbers who've actually voted for Shibir because they don't want the BNP to come in. Now, BNP on the other hand has been talking about the inclusive election that Ambassador Shringla mentioned. It's a different story that we are now talking about inclusive election, which talks about, of course, Awami League representation, which is not likely to happen. They also have explained that. I mean, both NCP and everybody I spoke to did explain why they can't have Awami League there. But I mean, I would just like to mention that why were we not talking about inclusive election in 2014, 2018, 2024? That was then an internal matter, and that was not inclusive, and we all knew it, but we didn't talk about it. So right now, of course, we've got a ME spokesperson saying the correct sentence and all of that. But I think we have to kind of accept and internalize the position that this election that's going to happen, if it's still iffy, but likelihood that they will happen in February, will be without Awami League. Because what they say is, and let's look at the new numbers now, the first time voters is 4 lakhs. There's about 28% of Bangladeshi population now in the age group of 16 to 28. This is the group who have 28% of the population in the 16 to 28 age group. They are the ones, the point that Rishi mentioned, that they don't have the history, the baggage of history, which is fine. But they also have a very deep-rooted angst about Awami League because of the election and the other corruption issue. What we have seen in the last few months is the vacuum that was left with Awami League, going away, was very successfully fielded in by the BNP workers. They knew this was their time to make hay while the sun, at this point of time. So while any other political party couldn't jump in, BNP workers, and there's a term in Bengali, I don't know how to express it really, extortion, chadabaji. Chadabaji. This is exactly what has, this was a part of the course by the Awami Leaguers for the last 15 plus years. It's now been very successfully taken over by the BNP. Now, this is not lost on the younger generation, and everybody I met, I in fact went for a conference which is being by one of the younger NCP group, where I met a variety of youth from all kinds of colors, not necessarily only Jamaat or NCP, but even Awami Leaguers, because again, given all these years of my going there, engaging with students, I have a kind of a constituency where I talk to everybody there. Everybody mentioned the same thing, that is this the reason? Is this why we laid down our blood? This is not. So what I'm suggesting here is, in Bangladesh, there is a shift that is happening. A shift that I don't think we are also very clear about, and I don't think a certain section of Bangladeshi, and again, most of my friends are Awami Leaguers, who do talk about the fact that they are so fed up with what is happening, the mobocracy, the violence. But most of the people that I've met and interacted beyond the Gulshan and the Baridharas of Bangladesh and Dhaka are saying we will take this violent interim any day over what we had for the last 15 years. I mean, there is absolutely no choices about that. There's a lot of clarity. Yes, there's a problem, but at least now we are. And the one thing that they keep saying, of course, it's a fact that huge arrests have taken place over the last 8-9 months. Many of our own friends are in the jail even today. We don't know on trumped-up murder charges. I don't know how an editor of a newspaper has been accused of murder. Many, not just him, there are many others such things. While that is also true, but for the first time, and this is across professors in the university, students, and even others have also said that first time we are able to speak freely. We are not scared to speak out, which we were for the last 10-12 years. I mean, that's a huge kind of a adverse environment there. What I now feel, and again, I'll just go back to a Pew Research report exactly a year ago, which has said that Jamaat was increasing. I completely agree that they've never got more than double-digit, they've never had a double-digit percentage of electoral support, Jamaat. But what I see now is that is going to change. In all likelihood, I mean, I'm no, I don't like to predict because of his development that is unlikely in that sense, but let's look at the best case scenario of elections being held on time. BNP has a fair chance of getting the large majority. It is also a fact that large numbers, also because it is known to many that the Chief Election Commission and all of that seem to be very BNP loyalist at this point of time, so that kind of helps in a country like Bangladesh. But it's not going to be the kind of overwhelming majority that they had expected last in the initial phases. What we have also seen in the last one day when the BNP leaders have been badly routed in the student election, there's a clamoring for Tariq Rahman to return. Now, I was told that apparently there are 2 cases they're still pending against him, which has prevented him from coming back to Dhaka. Nobody is sure about that, but apparently, if you remember when that Maniganj violence happened, the next day there was going to have that, one of the cases were going to be up in the judiciary, but that day they did hartal. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theory in South Asia, as you know, even in Bangladesh. So they mentioned this was deliberately done so that particular case doesn't come up and be heard. But so we heard that apparently there are 2 cases. He's also been accused of many of the other main cases, we know that. But again, when I asked BNP leaders whom I met, they said, no, he's coming back. Very soon. I don't know what the very soon is, but definitely before election, because they say this, holding BNP from London is not going to and especially after this particular election where they didn't do so well. But what I see, and I think that's something that the youngsters have been talking about, that they will not go back to a situation. So even for argument's sake, if BNP does win the election, it is going to be a different BNP. It is going to be a BNP which will not be rightist. They will actually try to capture the vacuum that Awami League has left.
Center left.
Yes, and they will look at that. Of course, the problem within Bangladesh is that while the political leaders have a particular position, often it's not being able to percolate down to the ground. So again, on the ground, a lot of the activities that happen by the Chhatra Dals everywhere is somehow has not been in control by the top leadership, and that's what we've seen in the last few months. That is something I think BNP, of course, has enough organization on the roads. Now, last few months we've seen Bangladesh, havoc by violence on the road. Now, everybody has been accusing each other. So I've actually spoken to my media friends there. And contrary to the opinion that in sitting in Delhi, we always thought, sitting in India, we always thought much of the violence is Jamaat emanated, which everybody said actually is not the case.
Yes.
This is Awami League at its best, trying to create that kind of thing. Of course, there are other elements that jump in also. It's not that. But on the other hand, again, this is some responsible people talking about the fact that so far they've been able to, and this is something that Jamaat is kind of staying away from the other, elements to ensure that they have. Now, there's this very iconic photograph which came up a couple of days ago. UK Ambassador Sarah Cook was hosting the Jamati women's wing, and so there were like 5 women with only slit eyes. The rest of them, they're all covered. So I talked about Dr. Tahir that if you, let's say, in best case scenario, if you do take over, I mean, you get the numbers, what happens? We are always thinking about Sharia law. He says, where have you ever heard that? When did we ever say we are bringing in Sharia laws? I said, I'm asking because that's a fear we have. I asked him about 1971. What's your position? Because for long we know that they had a completely different position on 71. He says, Mathur and Saidi both have actually gone public and have said that we apologize for the earlier 71 position. So we accept, he says, what we are upset about, and that's a position like other political parties also mentioned, that they felt Mujibur Rahman had completely, hijacked that entire liberation movement to be his own. Where the other political elements, and again, I think India played a strong hand there in kind of eliminating the left-wingers and all of that there. So that's a, kind of a kaleidoscope there I don't want to go back to. That is our problem. Our problem is not with the liberation. So that was a kind of a change of the movement. And again, when I asked both BNP and NCP and all of them, they of course said the fact that India is the most important neighbor. And I said, Dr. Tahir, can I say this publicly, that you're saying this? He says, absolutely, no hesitancy to repeat this, that India for us is the most important neighbor. I said, what about 2001 and 2006? Those memories are still vivid in our, head. He told me very categorically, of course he does this. I mean, Jamaat is charm offensive. I mean, it's amazing when you talk to them, but what they do on the ground is a different story altogether. But in terms of your interpersonal skills, they are fabulous. So he said, whether it's the Chittagong Arms Hall case or whether some of the other attacks, he says, give me one evidence of Jamaat, I'm there. I said, I'm lost here because obviously I don't have those details. So he said, we have a different way, and he talked about what they want for Bangladesh and all of that's a different matter. Now, BNP, when I asked them about 2001 and 2006, and I said, those memories hurt. He said, yes, but you remember our leader went to Delhi and said that we are now ready to work with India. This is a different India that we are working on. So all of that has happened, but a little bit I just want to add here, and I had a long conversation with the foreign advisor, Mr. Tawhid Hassan, who I've known for many years now, not just now. I've also had a chat with our High Commissioner and our deputy there. There are two very contrasting opinions that are emerging. Let's say when, interim came over, I think we were the first ones to tweet. We were not the first ones to call, but we were the first ones to tweet, and apparently there was no acknowledgement about that. From, India says that Bangladesh didn't acknowledge that we were the first ones to tweet a congratulatory message. The call came 2 days later. The call came on the insistence of Professor Yunus wanting to talk to Prime Minister Modi. Then, of course, we've seen a foreign secretary visit, which is, quite okay. There were some body language issues, interesting points that both of them made, but we'll go into that later. But the point is, he came back and in the parliament gave a statement exactly what the Yunus government wanted to hear about how, Sheikh Hasina, we don't encourage her to do anything anti-Bangladesh from our soil and all of that. And then, of course, we invited, to, on the Global South International Forum, where he gave a speech also. And I think that was also something we thought that Professor Yunus would be, happy to receive from our end. But subsequently, and there are many other small instances, I won't get into that. I'll just talk about the last instance that happened, which tells me that while rhetorically, every political leader, whether elected or not, is always going to say that Bangladesh and India are the closest partners, should be their best friends, and all of that. That's how we wanted. But down the line, it's not percolated because there is a very strong anti-India constituency there for a variety of reasons. I'll just get into the. One of the things was when this airplane crash happened in the school premises. The call came from Bangladesh to India about sending, support team. So when the medical team, they were the first ones to land in Dhaka. When they landed, they were told that you don't have the qualification to practice medical in Dhaka. So you can only observe patients, not treat them. Clearly, that doesn't send the right signals, right? But on the other hand, when China team appeared, and then China wanted to see the patients also, so then India was tagged along with them. So I'm just saying that while, and I mentioned this to both Mahfouz and to whoever I met, that while at the upper level, yes, you're talking about India, you're talking about all of this. Professor Yunus has given 3 brilliant interviews, Deutsche Welle, 2 BBC interviews, where he's talked about India is our most important neighbor. But it never got percolated down to the ground. And as I said, the foreign advisor has given me far more details about where he thought India could have done this, didn't do that. The fight about port and all of that, yarn and all of that is, there. But let me just sum up here by saying that I think right now, as I see Bangladesh emerging, as I said, now the point is, yes, 15 lakhs or more visas are being issued. But I don't know how many of you have actually applied for visas to Bangladesh. We just fill a form online, we put a picture there, we send it to either the BFS office in Kolkata or we give it to the Delhi office here. Within a day or two, all of us have got a visa stamp, right? Yes, those numbers are huge that India is doing. But some of you who do apply for visas to the US, you know how irritating it is. You ask for an appointment. It is similar situation there. To even apply and submit application, you have to do a ask for interview, which comes almost at interview application date comes almost 3 months. Now you can say that we are overstressed and all of that, but I'm just saying there are friends, there are people who come regularly, and the most irritating factor most of my friends face, who are academics like me traveling the world constantly, that if there is a Pakistan stamp on the visa, from even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that's it. Your visa to India is going to be denied. We live in this crazy world that if you've been to Pakistan sometime, in some time, in some avatar, you're out to, I think this confidence we don't lack, we lack clearly, is something that I've never been able to deal with. The other is, yes, from 2010 onwards, because of our security concerns being addressed by Sheikh Hasina very ably, we opened up, Ambassador Shringla talked about it. But the one, and this is, people who know the subject, and so don't want to overstate it, but the one most core critical issue for Bangladesh vis-a-vis India has been water. We have not addressed that. Yes, we have given them the 30 years, which happened during Sheikh Hasina in the 1996. We talked about Tista ad nauseum. To blame it on West Bengal, I think is really unfair, incomplete, and not doing justice either to your own constituency here in Bengal or to Delhi or to Dhaka. And the fact that we've talked about basin management in 2010 and there's not been one single movement except for putting it in every minute it's there, but in paper on the thing. And water is something. I mean, we might say that we've not stopped Tista. Tista flow is still happening, right? The problem of water sharing between any upper riparian and lower riparian is only during the lean season, which is essentially 8 weeks to 10 weeks or 12 weeks at the most. And I don't know why India, as a neighbor who was wanting to do well with all our rhetoric about neighborhood first and everything, why is it that we didn't understand that particular pulse within Bangladesh? That why we were not able to. So the Tista Barrage project was actually, done by Awami Leaguers. I was under the impression it was done outside, but I was told recently by Awami Leaguer himself that it was actually a project that they had shared it with us at some point of time. Clearly, we were not responding. They took it to China, and then of course we know what happened. India said, I mean, how can this ever happen and all of that. As of now, there's a conversation going on about Tista management. I'm just saying, in the last 8-9 months, why did India not convey that they were keen to work on that? I mean, I'm just saying there's kind of, double things that are happening on two sides. Bangladesh is saying something, India is saying something, but the gaps between the lip, cup and the lip is little too much here. And right now, let me just close in here by saying that if elections do take place, and irrespective of which government comes in, we can never recreate the relationship we had with Awami League in the next 50 years. So let's not go there. We have to reset completely. They have to reset even for their own constituency. They can't be seeing that they're working with India so closely as has been done. I think we did a great injustice to ourselves by being so proximate with Awami League and Sheikh Hasina. And we not only she came down, she took us down with her. And I think this is something that we now have to look at. I mean, if you look at the global situation and the dynamics that's happening, India is now moving away from it. It's silos, it's particular issues that we examine. So Bangladesh is now, I mean, all neighbors are difficult for us. It's a it's a question of managing neighbor. We can also say that we can work with other neighbor. How does that matter? But I don't think that's an option on the table. But we really have to re-examine the entire gamut of bilateral relationship with Bangladesh in the years to come. And I think a serious introspection is required to see that, we keep saying we did this for you, we did that for you. Did Bangladesh think we did that for them? There is the gap there, that they didn't think that we were doing it for their benefit. Yes, of course, huge people to people, all of that has happened, but there is a large constituency who has, of course, hated Sheikh Hasina for a variety of reasons, right and wrong. And we've, the spillover has been on us. But I think it's going to take a long while to correct that memory. And I think it has to be a huge effort. Again, intention has to be correct on both sides to take this relationship forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Freya. What the summit substance of what she was getting at, and in fact both of them mentioned to you, the role of student power. Now she got into the real politics of student power because there is already two very strongly organized student groups.
Very
Strongly organized student groups. In fact, if I may use the right term, strongmen groups, absolute muscle groups. One is the Chhatra Shibir of the Jamaat, and the other is the Chhatra League of the Awami League.
I just want to add something.
Bola?
There are a couple of election polls that has taken place. Daily Star did one, another Bengali newspaper did one. So initially the gap between BNP and Jamaat were about 30%, which is huge in this particular population. The recent one, which is done by I think Shamakul, I'm not sure, was about 8% difference between. Another poll, which was shared by me personally by somebody else, which has not been made public as yet, which was just happened a week ago. They finished compiling it. He said the numbers of Jamaat were higher than BNP.
Wow.
I don't know whether that's
Quite,
you know.
no, what she's saying is a wake-up call, number one. Some of us have been advocating that we are too much with the Awami League right from day one. And I say that with authority because my first encounter with the police in 1969 was because of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his jailing by the Pakistani authorities on the trumped-up Agartala conspiracy case. So one has been with Mujib and the Awami League from the beginning, and today it breaks our heart to say that you have gone rotten. That's one. The fight between the students, the Chhatra League of the Awami League, and the Chhatra League was in fact called the Stormtroopers. The degree of excesses they have gone through, in fact, the fall of Hasina, a large part of it is due to the excesses of the Chhatra League. No doubt about it. The other one, Chhatra Shibir of the Jamaat, were no saints. So we have this thing. The BNP, the largest organized party, is split into various groups that fight openly. Okay, the number of murders, if I may use the term, that have taken place in the last 2-3 months on internecine wars within the BNP is an all-time record. So you understand how much of it. But it is still the largest spread out party with a long tradition. And its original grounds that Major Ziaur Rahman was not given his rightful place has a bit of logic in it, and that we were obsessed with. So we'll not get into that. It only explains why statues are being toppled, and even if you feel hurt about it. Okay. Now, on our interconnectivity, everyone understands it, as Harsh put it. It's not just one neighbor. We are in schools, we are together, brought together. In fact, there was this famous poem of Tagore where he said that whom God have joined, how dare you try to split apart, that sort of thing. The joining is so strong that we need our translate, we need to this thing. So we need to take a strong stock of reality. And what the new contribution that Sri Radha said is about Jamaat 2.0. Because Jamaat has always been viewed as some sort of the way half pants were viewed here. So, but then they can also get sophisticated, they can also come out with the discourse that they can also have, what I say, a much more broader appeal, something that we have got to get reconciled to what because we don't know what is coming. We only know her input is that the Jamaat is on the rise, is trying to go through its 2.0 avatar and may actually get through. Our submission here would be that whoever the people of Bangladesh elect, we have to live with them with no hang-ups. No hang-ups and no memories that you did this in 1971, you did that in 1940. There's no question of raising these issues now. We are neighbors and neighbors. So, insofar as the panel is concerned, I think they have said the same. If there are 2 or 3 questions, we can take it before we close.
There's just one small point. I didn't hear much about Pakistan playing a part in Bangladeshi affairs. I think that this is also one of the...
She mentioned.
Just
He
in
mentioned the
passing.
Kunming meeting.
He also mentioned in passing. But I think Pakistan probably will continue or will grow its role gradually and play a greater role over there. We must keep that into account. That's all. Just a suggestion.
Yes.
Okay.
A small question. Do you think the broad consensus that there was in Bangladesh on the 1971 liberation, of course we know the Jamaat had its own position, which was very much aligned with Pakistan, but BNP, Irshad Party, Jatiya, they broadly had a consensus. What we saw in 1 month, 2 months, destruction of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's memorial, anti-Rabindranath Tagore thing, do you think the consensus has broken down about the 1971 liberation legacy?
The legacy is, the unified legacy that you talk about is what we have to admit is the Indian narrative. It's the Indian narrative that this is the way it was won and this is the one and he is the father of the nation and we installed him. That there were other fighters on the ground is something that we did not acknowledge on day one, and that was Mrs. Gandhi's fault. There's no doubt about it. She went about in a very, very determined manner to install or to legitimize or to place there someone she was more comfortable with. Now, comfort is not the only factor. Is not the only factor. Subsequent developments took place. The rot took place by 73. The rot was taking place, and you had goons going around in open jeeps in Dhaka, and people knew. So all sorts of things have happened, and if Mujib is being re-examined through a very hard way, there is something we need their people to understand. And as I mentioned about Ziaur Rahman, it doesn't matter whether I like him or not. The fact is that he was fighting the forces on the ground, and we never acknowledged that. वो हमारे तरफ से भी. Now, Harsh, you tell us, do you think would be the best method, best few steps of confidence building measures in the next, say, 4 months? We have 5 months. Number one is not to react to any provocation. That is number one. Because whoever is giving you a provocation has no legitimacy. Has no deep-rooted legitimacy. Legitimacy will only come in February. Prior to that, anyone making a statement is his personal bias put in whatever language. So that's one rule we follow. What else? Visas. Because I see Calcutta dried up. Calcutta, not only Calcutta, Madras and Chennai and other places where Bangalore, where treatments are good, dried up because of visas. Would we do something about visas? That's a goodwill measure. What other steps can we take to convey to the people of Bangladesh that we are not really involved in a manner for you to decide? It's for you to decide.
Let Hasina go. That is number one step.
Hasina is a major factor.
Yeah, we have
Is a major factor and would have to be a major decision.
Yes,
Not a seminar decision. So
No, I'm not saying that.
No, it's a perfectly good thing. In fact, Sheikh
Srinath
Hasina.
said that he's not in the government today, so he's not giving the MES perspective. But we made the same mistake with China so many years ago. And still the deep state of China goes against us. It was only one thing, you know that. And therefore I must tell you that my forefathers come from there. My immediate family came over, but a good part of my family is still there. There's a district called Bagerhat. Which was set up by my family. Even the PC college, from where most of the bureaucrats come in Bangladesh, was set up by my family. So I had a sentiment, so when we got a chance to set up a power project, I was chairman of NTPC at that time. I jumped at it. I went and they gave us a low-lying land, I did the necessary, we set up a power plant. They wanted more power, we gave them more power. But then you must understand, there are two Indias in the name of Bangladesh. There is one linguistic India, which is we Bengalis, we get sentimental, because that is their speech language. The other is the other India, the total India, number one. Number two, there is a strong divide between Hindus and Muslims. That feeling is very strong internally. Whosoever I spoke to in Bangladesh, they asked me first, are you a Hindu? That is because, as we have discussed before, my forefathers and their gene have done a lot of this thing to the local people there. So we must.
Rachudit, I'll give you one statistic
Yeah.
for people. This is 1900, the first released statistics of higher administrative posts in Bengal. Bengal, that means about 4 or 5 states put together. 6% of the Brahman were the caste, that's the upper caste, Hindu upper caste of Bengal, 6%, capturing 82% of the higher administrative posts. 6% capturing 82% of the higher administrative posts, and 54% of the Muslims of Bengal getting 10.2% of the jobs. So when we talk of discrimination, historic discrimination, it's a memory of a historic discrimination, so we'll have to live with it.
When I went from
So we can't turn the clock back. What has happened, and if somebody bears this grudge against you, we can't brand him as Islamicist. So there are reasons for the other identity, the other, the other avivekti to come out. Now, having said that, the purpose of calling, and I'm so grateful to the director of IIC, Mr. Srivastava, and all of you, very, very senior people to have attended. The purpose of it is to have a rethink on what we have, what has happened. And the first part of the consensus is that since the Awami League is not operating in this election, let us not get obsessed or sentimental about it. B, that there is a lot of angst about what they have done. C, that the rising forces of the youth and the new forces that are coming up, like the NCP as a party, we can only speculate whether the NCP of Muhammad Yunus and the students, the old man and the youngest, so to put together, it's quite a combination, whether they'll at all make any dent, or is it an urban phenomenon? Is it a Bhadralok phenomenon?
Let's hear Mr.
The
Shukla.
Jamaat is again the major elephant in the room. Jamaat al-Islam, they have not succeeded so far, but the spirit of Bangladesh is now on that side, and may be actually reflected in the elections, or it may be hung. Yes.
Sir, I would tend to agree with her, sir, when he said that the very fact that one big party, Awami League, is barred from contesting next election. The legitimacy of this election is definitely going to be under big question mark, number one. Number two is that this Jamaat, we have seen what the role they have played. They have played recently, or even in Jammu and Kashmir. The role they have played in splitting this country. Then Jamaat articulation might have changed. They must be articulating their views more nicely, as Sri Radha was mentioning. But the basic ideology would not change. So if they are going to assume a bigger role in the unfolding scenario in Bangladesh, I don't think that we should do anything at this juncture. We should just keep quiet, wait and watch. Let us see what kind of dispensation ultimately emerges out of the election, what kind of response they think. We are not actually dying, to build up relationship with them. We treat the other way. And so my own feeling would be that let us watch. I'm not saying that we should do anything, we should not interfere in the election, let them have the election.
I'll put it this way. Jamaat is known, and now it's about 70 years, 50 years plus, that the people of Bangladesh have also known them. Okay?
Let's hear Mr. Sri.
Now if the people of Bangladesh choose to elect them, we cannot go in for any complaint.
But
Sir.
I want to ask you this, that why can't we, the Bengali communities, the roughly 25 crores now,
29.
globally,
29.
admit that all communities in the world, people, all nations in the world, do not like to be ruled by others. Bengal, all both sides of Bengal, are unique in the sense that they don't want to be ruled by themselves also. Because if you look at the history of Bangladesh, you will find that that whole plethora of governments have come and gone in Bangladesh for often very trivial reasons, and for personal ambitions, and so on and so forth. So we have to keep that in mind, that part of the story in mind. Yeah. It's a very individualistic society, exceedingly this. Even the most humble citizen has a certain independence.
We were under Buddhist rule for the longest period when the rest of India turned Brahmanic. So we have reasons that, as Dr. Nandi says, that the sum and substance is that Bengal has a very strong anti-state streak. Anti-statist, anti-authoritarian. Very, very, very strong. And anybody who tries to say anything to it just gets lost. So that's getting to it. We are there, very much part of the Indian Union, and we're doing well. I ask Harsh to do the closing remarks. And now you're an MPR, not diplomat. So you have to be articulate.
Well, I mean, if I'm articulate, then I'm afraid I'll have to unleash a few, genies out of the Pandora's box that may not be so pleasant. But a lot of what we've discussed, and some of what we've discussed actually is not in the public domain, and I don't think we should get into that. But I want to make a few points, I think, to put certain things in perspective. We've all had our views. First of all, let's talk about the Jamaat-e-Islami. The Jamaat-e-Islami was an auxiliary force for the Pakistani, let's say, army. In 1971, there were the Razakars, there was the Al-Badr, Al-Shan Brigade.
Al-Badr.
The genocide that was committed in Bangladesh, mainly of Hindus, was primarily by the Jamaat-e-Islami. Let's be very clear on that. And they have blood on their hands, and they are also part of the Muslim Brotherhood. So this same Muslim Brotherhood, which is in Bangladesh, is in Egypt, is in Pakistan, is in different parts of the world. And this, let's say, leopard is not going to change its spots. So I think this is something that was conveyed by Mr. Srivastav. I think Mr. Jawahar Sarkar also mentioned it in some way. But the Jamaat-e-Islami is not going to change. And I think we have to be able to draw a line. It is one thing to hear what they say, because as Sri Dada has said, they're very glib, they're very good at lobbying, they've got excellent people working for them in United States, in UK, and I think they, on the face of it, you can feel that they are very modern, sophisticated, progressive. But as you go down the rank and file, and again she has, very objectively conveyed her views, I think as you go down to the grassroots level, it's a different story. And I think we have to be very wary of the sort of, let's say, increasing presence of Pakistan in Bangladesh, including on our own borders, the presence of ISI on our borders, the real danger of a collusion between countries that are inimical to our interests, facilitated by those who control the current system, which is primarily the Jamaat-e-Islami. I can't rule out what Sri Radha has said, that they might come out also pretty successfully. I mean, in Bangladesh, there is, if it goes one way, it's like West Bengal. If it goes one way, it goes one way. 30 years Marxist rule, 30 years Trinamool. It doesn't, and that's the way it is. I'm sorry, I just a lighter way.
You're right.
But the fact is that, let's say that whoever has the momentum takes over. I mean, you win the student elections, it's not necessarily a popularity. You just have the muscle power, you have the influence, you have the ability to, control the system. And my own sense is that, we may have a bit of a surprise in the elections that come up. I mean, it may not be on the lines that we may think, as it is, those parties that are in this electoral fray, when it happens, are those who are in some senses already right of center. And from that right of center also, you might have a choice that is even more difficult for us to adjust to. So that is the reality that is there, and this is something that we have to think about, as to what will be our options. Because if your basic objective is to set up a caliphate or a khilafat by 2030, then you're moving in a different direction. And if your objective is to surreptitiously, either overtly or otherwise, promote radical Islam, fundamentalism, and possibly terrorism, because during BNP's time, again Shirada mentioned that. What about 2001, 2006? It was the worst period, the Chittagong arms halls case, this open support for insurgency in India. It's only in 2008 that things started changing, when all the leaders of Indian insurgent groups based in Bangladesh were handed over to us. That you had peace in the northeast, the Ulfa Accord, the Assam Accord, all of these came in after that, different parts of our northeast. And I sort of hesitate to think of what could be the consequences of the wrong, let's say, dispensation coming to power in Bangladesh for our security and for, I would say, longer term interests. So in my own sense, I think there is an academic side to it. There is a discussion that we can have, but there is a practical side. There is a security related side. There is a matter of real concern that every citizen here should be concerned about. And I think we have to be very, very wary of that. It's okay to say that we will work with anybody who comes to power. But if that anybody is working against your interests, then you have to be cognizant of that. You cannot say, okay, you're there and we will, you're fine. So while I think we would like to work, as I said right in the beginning, in a collaborative sense with all our neighbors, and that should be our spirit. That is the spirit of neighborhood first. But I think we have a difficult situation in our hand. And certainly, I think some of this, assessments were correct. I mean, in the sense that obviously, 15 years of Awami League government had its certain limitations. I would not say that go so far to say that we were, let's say, had double standards. I mean, I do recall that even in 2019, when the elections took place, we made a statement calling for free and fair elections. I also recall myself taking this up with the senior leadership in Bangladesh at that time, saying it is in your interest to have free and fair elections, because that is, you will win with free and fair elections. You don't have to do anything else. And having an opposition is good for you. But what you choose to do is something else. It is up to you to decide how you want to run your government. We cannot, you talk about interference in internal affairs. This is what it is. If interference really means that you are forcing your view down on someone else, which you cannot do and will not do. Not do also irrespective of who comes in, but we have to make sure that our security interests are protected. And when it comes to our immediate neighborhood with countries with whom we have common borders, I think there is no such thing as internal affairs. This is my own view. Please don't get me wrong. I think you have to be proactive in protecting your interests. And without, of course, you have to ensure that, the interests of people are not. I don't believe that you should do anything that should harm the interests of people. But when it comes to governments, when it comes to administrations, dealing with them, I think you have to be very firm, very clear, and your interests have to be paramount. And that is how we should conduct neighborhood. This is my view. And I'll press the case here. So I don't think we have a consensus on everything.
No,
we have a consensus on some things. But, we have areas where we have to agree to disagree.
So for next 5 months, it's best to wait and watch and be as pleasant as possible, so that the people of Bangladesh get a choice, get to decide their choice without any external provocations. That's it. After that, one sees what will happen. Thank you very much for such patience and
Thank you.
ठीक है, कोई मुझे कॉल कर लेगा तो मैं बता दूंगा।